Yes, I can tell you that in all European countries, women prefer part-time work. What am I basing that on? That if you look at differences in how happy they are, then women are happiest if they work part-time. And part-time is any job less than 35 hours. And they're less happy if they have a full-time job. And for men, it's the other way around. Men who don't work full-time are less happy, and men who work full-time are more happy. And for men, it doesn't really matter in terms of their happiness how much their wife works or whether she doesn't work at all. Women prefer themselves to work part-time, but to have a husband who will work or a partner who will work full-time. But not every country has options for working part-time. And there are two arguments here. One is it allows flexibility. It allows the wonderful opportunities to combine a working life and a home life. On the other hand, what we know from research is that those in part-time jobs do not advance as quickly. And I live in a country where very few women are economically independent, and economically independent means that they make just net minimum wage, which is welfare level, so social welfare level. And why? Because very few either do not work or they work part-time. And I also live in a country where very few women are in top positions in the universities or in governments, for example. So that's a drawback of working part-time, that it's more difficult to advance and to advance to a position where decisions are made. And I do believe that it's necessary for women to also be in those positions and not just to leave all the decision-making to men. If we look at the Nordic countries, then we do see a much higher participation of men in child rearing and homemaking. And that has been very strongly encouraged by law. And in countries where of the parental leave, if there is a fixed portion that has to be taken up by the father, and if it's not taken up, it's lost, in those countries we see a better division of paid work between men and women. More and more women are working full-time. And we also see a better division of unpaid work. So the daddies are doing, participating, or at least taking care of the children and also doing more housework. And then there are other countries, like in England, there's also a high proportion of women in part-time jobs. But that has not been created by the government. It's very strongly created by the economic circumstances. And in other countries, I'll take Germany, very few part-time jobs. It's you work full-time or you do not work. And that's the same in a lot of the Eastern and Southern European countries as well. I personally am strong in favor of quota. Because if I look, and I wasn't always in favor of quota, but I am now, because if we just leave things the way they are, yes, things will change. We look at the young women now, they're very, very well educated. They want to do something with their education, which is wonderful. So we do see them entering the labor force, but we also see that many of them are leaving or going into part-time jobs at the age of 35. So there is, or around the age of 35. So there are some tensions there. Several countries have introduced the right to part-time work. But again, this right tends to be adopted by women and not by men. So I think if we're looking at policy changes, I think we have to focus quite strongly on trying to get the men to change and not to get the women to change, because they are improving their education, but they're running into a lot of obstacles. If we look at those who've never married, we tend to see very strong educational differences, that the single women, those who are never married, tend to be well educated. And whether they were unable to find a partner, or whether they thought, this is the only way I can be successful in my career is by not having any attachments, we don't know. But if you look at the single men, they tend to be, there was an American sociologist who called them the bottom of the barrel, men with poor economic prospects who were not attractive to women, who were still, and still are, looking for a breadwinner partner. These men have poor labor skills, limited pensions, and what we also know is that they're not as skilled at forming relationships. So we also tend to see those never married men who also have no children. We see that they are also not as healthy as those with a partner. We also see that they tend to enter into institutional facilities at a much younger age than their married counterparts. So there, if I'm thinking of groups in society that could use additional attention, I would say it's the single men, whether they're divorced or widowed or never married.